Hey, welcome back. Thanks for clicking on that link. Thank you for tuning on to Jima Speaks. This will be the concluding part of the podcast titled 008B, Empower to Change Subconsciousness. So this is the part 2 of that podcast. I couldn't finish on that particular podcast, so I had to end that podcast rather abruptly. So this will be the completion of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to recount a few things that I mentioned in 008B, Empower to Change Subconsciousness, and then I will conclude from where I stopped. I will let you know where I actually stopped the previous podcast. So this is going to be a refresher. So just give me about 5 minutes and I'll just go through what I mentioned in the previous podcast. I did mention that I will be using this Albert Einstein as a reference because he has survived 3 massive events that have actually reshaped our lives. Okay, and that we are actually going through a 4th major event that will be reshaping our lives beyond the 3 that Albert Einstein went through. And I mentioned that we're going to lose more millions of people globally post COVID-19. We will lose roughly, and this is me speaking from my own personal interpretation of world and global events, we're going to lose more than 100 times of the number of people we lose during COVID-19 itself. Okay, I mentioned that taking pharmaceutical drugs kills at least 500,000 people a year, and that there is still not a global war, okay, when we lose this number of people yearly. And in comparison to how many we lose through street drugs we lose about 50,000 a year, and we go to war in losing that number of people. Yet we lose 500,000 and nobody goes to jail. Okay, and I've said that I have applied the Synthesis Toolbox Kit, hence I'm able to apply it in my series of speaks using the Toolbox Kit. We are on Toolbox Pill number 8, which is the Education and Empower Pill. They've worked for me. I've optimized my health. I've reversed my chronic illnesses. I've been healed from chronic fatigue syndrome. I've been healed from fibromyalgia. I've been healed from liver fibrosis. I've been healed from abdominal obesity, where I lost about 20 kilograms, okay, most especially around my trunk section, which in itself has helped me prevent myself from getting into a possible high blood pressure or hypertension, into being a patient of that, because I was able to reverse my abdominal obesity. I've been able to reverse my sexual dysfunction. I've been able to, reverse my severe depression and severe anxiety disorder, which is what I was diagnosed with and being treated with over a 3-year period. So I did all that by experimenting. I did all that going against the grain. I did all that going against the advice of medical doctors. And at that point in time, I was taking 15 doses of antipsychotic pills on a daily basis. Okay, so basically, I've been able to do what we call biohacking. I did that on myself. I've been able to develop a confidence in the 9 toolbox kit as a result of that. Okay, and through understanding my biohacks, the things I did to my body helped to change my consciousness, helped to change my reality. And because I understand that my personality is the one element that can create my personal reality. And the reason why changing my consciousness was quite key was because I learned through the 3-year journey I've gone through, where I recovered my health, that 95% of my life actually came from the programs that were in my subconsciousness between the age of 1 and 7, and 5% of my life is about using my consciousness. And so having this understanding has transformed my life, and it is my goal to share this experience through a series of short podcasts, which I'm going to be releasing. So as a pioneer of the Synthesis Toolbox kit, I'm having experimented on my biology, my mind, my body, and improving my performance. I've been able to generate a confidence level to share my this Synthesis Toolbox kit, and the objective is to share with just one person who will take this on board and hopefully influence the next person. And I realized that it all boils down to a high level of consciousness and control over what we have control over, and letting go of what we have no control over. Because when you hold on to the things you have no control over, it then propels you into a state of being stressed, which is the cause is the number one cause of visits to the doctors, accounts for over 90% of doctors' visits. Okay, so I gave an instance of how we can apply the 9 toolbox kit on an element of our lives, and I gave an instance of using the sex pill. Okay, so if we approach a recommended set of steps, this will help you to apply that 7th pill, the sex pill, to effectively improve your life. And I give instances of how you can do this by nourishing your body daily, by exercising, by taking vitamin D, which we call the sunshine vitamins, by taking essential micro and macronutrients, avoiding sugars, sleeping well, eating cholesterol high meals or meals high in cholesterol, which could mean you could take eggs, soft-boiled eggs, and hydrating your body with water, and things like detoxing yourself, improving your metabolism. And these are things that when you do them, they will build up an optimal sex life. And you do that on a daily basis, you'll be able to have a strong enough erection to satisfy both yourself and your partner. And that's what we are about in this particular tribe. Excuse me, I'm struggling for air here. So now we need to optimize and upgrade our minds and bodies in order to reach the goals we want to reach in terms of optimal health. And so it's going to be a new experience, and that new experience that we generate will enrich the circuits in our brains, because that's where the newness is going to come from. And I did mention that I have a big challenge in that people want to achieve results. I want to achieve results almost immediately. And that's not going to happen. It's going to have to be a predetermined set of activities that we do daily. I did recommend that we need to apply the Synthesis Toolbox kit for at least 9 months to begin to enjoy the benefits. And these benefits will be your own personal hacks, which would they will be uncomfortable, they will be unfamiliar. However, when you stick to those things, you will get over to that break point, and then success becomes the reward. Okay, so I took a pot shot at defining conscious and subconscious minds, and I mentioned that your conscious mind commands, and then your subconscious mind obeys. Your subconscious mind is meant to be an unquestioning servant, okay, or rather your body is meant to be a servant to your mind. So your body is meant to be an unquestioning servant to your mind, and it's going to take a lot of work day and night to make your behavior fit into a pattern that will be consistent with your emotionalized thoughts, with your hopes and your desires. that all our habits of thinking and acting are stored in our subconscious mind. Okay, and that's very key to achieving success with the eighth pill. I'd also mentioned that my favorite book teaches that if you teach a child how he or she should live, when that child waxes older, he will not depart from that particular way. And Aristotle says that give me a child until he's 7, and I will show you the man. Also, it's also a principle applied by the Jesuits. Okay, they say give me a child until he's 7, and I will give you a man. So we believe in that philosophy that 95% of our lives comes from the culture environment and the programs of life on how to live. And these are things that we got in the first 7 years of our lives. I mentioned that the word subconscious means below consciousness, and sub there meaning below. Okay, and this is very relevant because 95% of our lives comes from the programs in our subconsciousness, and only about 5% of our lives are about using our consciousness. So it's quite important to understand that we've been fed a lot through the media, and it's manipulated media propaganda, and that's how we have actually been programmed subconsciously, and it's been programming done through manipulated repetition by the media, by the press, by our education system, which has failed us, and through peer groups or peer pressure or peer association, and through our parents, and in reference to this podcast, through Big Pharma, which once you take a pill recommended by Big Pharma, it then sets you into a particular course of action, and the end result is an already preordained and predetermined one, which will be not a pleasant one. Okay, so these are things that we have been programmed into. So we need to find a way of reprogramming our minds. And I did talk about natural hypnosis, the fact that there are two processes, or there are two ways in which our minds are programmed, our subconscious minds are programmed, and the two will be through suggestions, in a state of being in a natural state of hypnosis, which will be the first 7 years of your life, and then after the first 7 years will be through repetition, through practice. I gave an instance of how you would be able to learn how to drive because you would repeatedly go through driving lessons. The same thing applies to how you learn the alphabet from A to Z. You will have to do this over and over. However, at a point in time, you will have learned this, you will have completed these lessons, and once you are completed in these lessons, you don't have to go back into them. And those are the two ways in which we are educated, through hypnosis in a theta state and through repetition in a conscious state. Okay, and both learnings feed our subconsciousness and then eventually create our realities. So I also went into describing meditation and the fact that we are using hypnosis in the context of meditation. So I don't want to be taken the wrong way. And my favorite definition of meditation, of hypnosis being a state which resembles sleep, but a state in which a person can then make suggestions to another person, and in that state the person responds. Okay, that being hypnosis. But the fact that we are actually using hypnosis in a self-hypnosis context, which would be connected to meditation, and this is what I believe would enable us to change the quality of our lives through the application of the 9 pills in the toolbox kit. So the 9 tools in the toolbox kit are what we're going to apply to self-meditate and change. We establish the fact that we need change, and change is essential for us to educate, or I did say, or to re-educate ourselves in order to get the most out of the 9 toolbox kit. So right, I believe, and I think I'll take the cue from here to continue to the fact that to where I left off, and I believe and I stand by the fact that 95% of what we are today are results of the first 7 years of our lives. And those 7 years are created through a state of theta meditation. And I mentioned that, have you ever wondered why it's easy for a child born into a rich home to succeed in life? In this essence, at least financially, even though he might be stupid. Okay, and that's because he's had his subconscious fed with habitual construct over the first 7 years of his life. And so if you're born into a poor family, which won't be a choice you made as an unborn baby, at that stage, when you are under 7, you are below consciousness. Okay, so living in either poverty or health when you're an adult is something that will be a result of your subconsciousness, and you have a 5% conscious part of you. Okay, and it's that 5% conscious part that you begin to make choices, and those are the parts of your life that are not programmed, okay, through your subconsciousness. Those are the parts of your life that you will have to apply to change what you've been programmed through in your subconsciousness. These are things that you learned through observation and mirroring as a person who was below consciousness. Now, if you don't change your subconsciousness, then what's going to happen is that you could struggle your whole life trying to get rich. That's if you're born into a poor family. However, in doing that, you are not just going to make it, because your programming is not set in the light, on the line, to give you success as somebody who has lived or who was born into a rich family. You could be if you're from a rich family, you could be stupid your whole life and still make it. Not because it was thinking that made you rich. However, it was because it's unconscious behavior that was downloaded from the DNA of your rich family's belief system, and these were given into you. These were programmed into you through your senses, through hearing, through smelling, through experiencing, through mirroring, through copying, through imitating, and or observing and seeing your rich mom and your rich dad's positive attitude, by virtue of the way they spend money, by virtue of the way they treat money, by virtue of the way they talk about money, by virtue of the way in which they use money to take away stressors in their lives, paying for all their bills, most especially, though not restricted to the ones that concern you as a child. Now, they unconsciously made you believe that money takes care of everything. And my favorite book tells me of how money is a servant to, and not the other way around. So money serves, and how money in itself answers all things. Okay, so growing up, this whole environmental behaviors that you are picking up as a rich kid, which were things such as behaviors, attitudes, were things in your unconsciousness, and they will prevail upon you. And then you will begin to make the right moves. You begin to take the right decisions, and this will be done unconsciously. And when you then engage your 5% conscious mind, which are not programs installed in you in your first 7 years of living, okay? These are not programs in which you learned through repetition, okay? There might be programs, there might be programs you learn through repetition after your first 7 years, but before the age of 35. So when you engage your 5% conscious mind, then you might look stupid, and because it is unconscious, and is the same, and that is the same thing that applies to being born in a poor family. It's the same thing with a poor mindset. It's the same thing you will have as a poor mind set mentality person, because you apply your 5%, which is your consciousness. You need to make an effort. However, your 95% is your unconscious, is your subconsciousness. You don't need to make an effort to actually do that. So poor people have beliefs from their family, from beliefs repeated to them when you are subconscious, and it's a system, it's a belief system repeated to you over and over. It could be things such as you cannot make it in life, that your life is going to be a struggle, that you have got to just manage, you know, manage your life. So you understand why a manager in the office of a CEO never lives and enjoys the sort of life or the sort of wealth that a shareholder or an investor or a business owner enjoys, because it started from when when the poor child was growing. He was being taught that they need to manage, for instance, manage the butter and the fridge, manage the milk in the fridge. So it's a management culture that was actually infused into the child, and it's not managed food, because an overuse of it is bad for the body. It's managed food, because an overuse of the food will mean that they will not be enough to carry the family through the rest of the month. So if they use all the food up in the first week of the month, then it's going to be a problem for the rest of the 3 weeks in the month. So that's where the management mentality is infused into our children, and that needs to be changed. So poor people believe that things are hard, and they tell you as you grow up, with stuff like you'll be told stuff like, who do you think you are? I mean, what do you think you are doing? Where did you think you were going in the shop? Asking me to spend, say, $20 on that toy, especially when you are with other friends. So your parent puts you under pressure by saying, who do you think you are? I mean, where were you going, trying to pick a toy because you're trying to impress, or because you are with your friends, when you could have chosen a toy that was about maybe $1. You go choosing a toy that is $20. So they will say to you, look, I will choose the toy for you, and don't you embarrass me in the presence of your friends, or it could be a neighbor. Do you want them to understand or realize that I could not afford to buy you that toy? And I could go on and on giving examples on that. So it's important to note that if this program that you get when you're a growing child, okay, if it's a program that is instilled in you, it's a 95% chance that when you grow up as an adult, you will sabotage yourself. And that's the one reason why poor people stay poor and rich people stay rich. And that is because of the programming that was instilled in you as a child when you are below the level of consciousness. Now, I like to say this, and it's been said popularly, that take all the wealth of the few rich in the world and hand over to every other person in the world. Okay, what then happens is that the rich will eventually get the money back. The wealth will gravitate back to the rich. And you know why? Because the rich have installed rich mentality into their 95% subconsciousness. And that's the reason why Donald Trump has taken business bankruptcies 6 times, and yet he is still a billionaire. And after leaving office, that's Donald Trump, mark my words, he's going to be multiple times richer and wealthier than he was before he went into office, because wealth is infused in his DNA, in spite of the fact that when he tries to engage his 5% consciousness to rule, what happens? Okay, if he tries to engage his 5% consciousness to rule the second biggest economy post COVID-19. I say second biggest because obviously China is going to become the biggest economy post COVID-19. Okay, he's going to make a stupid job of it, because he's going to engage his 5% consciousness as opposed to his 95% subconsciousness, which has made him wealthy. Why? Because he's not meant to engage his 5% consciousness as much as he will have to do. However, he will do that, and he will become, I will not say it, I will not be drawn into saying he's going to become more stupid, but that's what's going to happen, because as a child thinks in his heart, so is he. That's exactly what my favorite book teaches me. So essentially, in this tribe, we need to raise ourselves differently. We need to raise ourselves in the way that we want to see our children manifest when they are above 7, when they are above 35 years old. So as a parent, what we need to do, or what we have to do, is recognize and appreciate the fact that 95% of our behavior, of our choices, of our decision making will be coming from our subconsciousness. So a child is going to record for its first 7 years everything he sees, everything he hears, everything he smells, as we parents do. And that newborn baby is going to look at us parents, because we are authority figures in their imaginary world, and we are the parents. So the very first thing a baby learns in the first week or two of life is going to be to establish who the parent is. Now, establishing who the authority figure is very important, because that's the reference point for that baby. I believe you follow me. That's going to be his reference point. So when things happen in their life, and they will begin to happen, they're going to look at the parent first. Okay, I love how one of my mentors explained this. He gave an analogy, which I will want to give here. So let's look at a child in a playground environment. Okay, so a child is on a swing and then falls off the swing onto the ground. Now, the first thing the child looks, or the first thing the child does, will be to actually check out how his parent has responded. So he looks at the mother, and if the mother is like being frantic and screams, then the child, the kid will start crying also. However, if the mother goes and says, "Hey, get up and get back on the swing," the child gets back up on the swing. He will not cry, even though he might be feeling or experiencing some level of pain. Now, that is a reflection of what the child mirrors of his mother. So you have to recognize a child is going to observe every move of you, and then you also have to recognize the same also. So if 95% of a child's personality comes from his invisible programming, the things he sees the parents do, you are going to pass on the family pattern to that child unconsciously. So when you look at your life, you then see that the behavior was passed from your mother or your father, passed to you, and your mother or your father got it from your grandmother, your grandfather, and so on and so on. However, until somebody in that chain breaks that invisible programming, until somebody says, "I'm going to stop this, I'm going to break this," what will happen is that it's going to keep on being passed on from generation to generation. And until you break that programming, and until you resocialize your family tree, what you will have is programs stored from your grandmother, which were passed to your mother, which were passed to you, which you are going to then pass on to your child. Okay, so I will need to pull this podcast to a close. Okay, here and try and complete quickly. I don't want to go past 40 minutes on this particular one. I would like to complete. There's going to be a third part to this, okay, which I will try and cover hopefully tomorrow, being the 5th of April, or latest by the 6th. So in closing, we as a tribe say that we guarantee you that as you take as you take the 9 pills in our toolbox kit and do this every day for at least the first 9 months, you'll begin to see and discover a newness of life, one that will bring you into a total state of success in both optimal health and wealth. There is a conventional dogma, um, and GMAX Speaks is coming up with a whole different line of belief about our belief system. And there is one challenge though, and this dogma can only be established when you guys help me, okay, to get through this challenge. It's the fact that the big players, big pharma, big foodie, big telco, and big cosmeceutical industries have invested so much money into the current belief systems that we have all been socialized in, and now realize that this belief system is not right. Okay, they know that the system that they've spent so much money is not right. Now they have a huge dilemma. Okay, now the dilemma is that over the decades up to now, big pharma, big telco, big foodie, big cosmeceuticals have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in this particular belief system that we've been socialized in. And because they've spent so much money, they just won't let it go away. They've invested so much into educational institutions and also into government. And this investment, the hold they have, the monopoly they have, will just not go away. It will just not change. So the only way in which we are going to be able to change these belief systems is by infusing into our minds, into our subconsciousness, a new belief system. And that is why we've come up with this 9 toolbox kit with 9 pills for us to, on a daily basis, take these 9 pills, use them, and when we invest into our subconsciousness, it then becomes our personal reality, because we will have changed our personalities applying these 9 pills. Okay, and so I would like us to keep tuned into this channel. I'm going to put a close on this section on empowerment, but actually called Empower. So it's education and empower. I've covered education. I'm covering empower. I've got one more 50 or 1 hour more to cover on that series, and then I'll be done with the education and empower tool, and I will complete with the success pill. So right now, I've actually completed on the empower part 2. There is a part 3 coming up. Okay, we've completed this part. Well, it's meant to be part 2 or part 1, but I had to break into 2 parts. So we are going to finish up, and next up is going to be Empower Part 2. So thank you so much for clicking onto this link. Remember that this is the concluding part of the first part, which I started earlier on, which I could not complete. So what you will need to do, I'll please ask you, is to go listen to 008B1. I'll make it 008B1, Empower to Change Subconsciousness. This is the 008B2, Empower to Change Subconsciousness. I'll be releasing the part 3 of the empowerment tool. Thank you so much. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but you will see that the next one is going to be 008C. Okay, this is going to be 008B2. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you clicking on that link. Keep yourself infused with these pills that you've heard so far. There's more to come. There are more 5-minute podcast pills to come. It's difficult to sit down and listen to for the 5 minutes and 1 hour. I'm really stretching it, but I'm almost across the line. I'll be across the line when I've done the success toolbox kit peel. After the success toolbox kit peel, it's going to be very, very short releases of podcasts. Thanks so much and have a good day. God bless. Bye.